Concerns abound over the impact of tariffs at the Saskatchewan legislature. Meanwhile, both parties are behind the recent carbon tax cancellation. Here to break it all down, our political panel, Murray Mandryk, writes a political column in the Regina Leader-Post. We're also joined by Jeremy Symes, who covers the legislature for the Canadian Press. Good morning, Murray.
Good morning.
Good morning, Jeremy.
Good morning.
So, Jeremy, everyone's waiting on Wednesday's tariff announcement by President Trump. What was the response from both the government and the opposition?
Yeah, for sure. I think we're all watching Wednesday, that news conference with Trump in the Rose Garden with his big poster slide, just seeing if we are on that list, of Canada's on that list of countries that are going to get additional tariffs. And what we learned is that we're not going to be additionally tariffed on other goods, except we still have the 25% tariffs on steel, aluminum, automobiles, everything else that falls within our trade agreement we have with the U.S. No tariffs there for now. We saw NDP leader Carla Beck come out pretty quickly after Trump made this announcement. She spoke to reporters and she says, even though Canada is not on this list, we're still not off the roller coaster ride that Trump has been having us all on. She says there's still time for Canada to double down and invest in our infrastructure in this country and also expand our markets as well to other countries and grow our economy that way. And she also says there's a lot of uncertainty. We have farmers going into seeding pretty quickly for their crops. That has to do more with the Chinese tariffs on canola and affecting them, but they're thinking about that. The U.S. tariffs are still affecting farmers, she says. And just people wanting to make investments right now aren't too sure really if they want to be spending more money at a time when we're not entirely sure what this will mean for everybody. Premier Scott Moe provided a statement. He was in Europe while this was going on. And he says, it appears on the face of it that Canada's approach in talking with U.S. officials has been successful in this. But he's still concerned about the steel tariffs, the lumber tariffs. And even though we still have these tariffs on us, Moe's saying, we're going to continue to engage with the U.S. To have them all removed. He also sent a bit of a warning to Canada, just saying don't do too many countermeasures, counter tariffs, because the more you do, the more you're going to harm our economy here.
And Murray, we never know what's next with President Trump, as we heard from Crystal Lee and been talking about all morning. What is Canada's Prime Minister, when he's responded to this, and Jeremy mentioned don't go too hard on these counter tariffs, what do you make of the latest developments this week coming out of Ottawa and here in Saskatchewan?
I think politically it has probably been a good election thing for Mark Carney. It isn't a good thing for anybody. And here's the reason why. Even if we duck the tariffs, even if they didn't happen as Scott Moe predicted, Scott Moe should be, by the way, getting some credit for basically his line of take Donald Trump seriously, but not literally, because this is the third time when he has literally not imposed the 25% tariffs he said he would impose. From that sense, I think Scott Moe had a better sense of how Donald Trump functions and such. I assume he got that from talking to Republican allies and whatnot. But here's the problem for Scott Moe, is that even if you have that acquired knowledge, what can you do to prevent it? Nothing, because no one can reach Donald Trump, not those close to Donald Trump, not those somewhat adjacent, and certainly not those adjacent to the adjacent, which seems to be the Republicans that Scott Moe had talked to. So Scott Moe's influence was significantly less. So politicians like Scott Moe can't necessarily do a victory lap. To your question, I don't think Mark Carney or Scott Moe or any politician are doing a victory lap right now, because it's such a disaster and so unpredictable that you really can't say anything about this right now that's a win. We're losing trillions and trillions of dollars from the world trade economy that's likely going to put us into a deep recession or worse. Where the United States is going to be really feeling it right now, and we're still adjacent to the United States. And as Scott Moe talks about his supply chain arguments going with tractor parts and everything and machines going back and forth, this is all now disrupted. It's very hard for a Mark Carney and especially a Scott Moe to sit back and say that Wednesday was is any kind of win for him. I don't expect you're going to hear that today. I expect to hear more of a channel changer from Scott Moe, still talking about big emitters and the carbon tax and Saskatchewan being the first absolutely carbon tax-free province in the country. I think you'll hear a lot about canola, which has been sort of an underreported story in terms of its tariffs and its impact on Saskatchewan. But I think it's very difficult, even though perhaps Scott Moe does deserve credit for reading Donald Trump correctly, for Scott Moe to take credit for any of this.
Jeremy, Murray mentioned Scott Moe. What do we know about what Scott Moe's plans are? He is back from the UK and the EU. He's going to meet with the media.
Yeah, that's what we're expecting. We're expecting a news conference today with him. Hopefully, I don't want to preclude anything, but we hope to see him. But he did put out a post on social media after his trip in Europe. He says, in light of these U.S. tariffs, our government remains focused on expanding Saskatchewan's export markets around the world. So he's still out there trying to sell this message to folks in Europe that look at what we produce in Saskatchewan, we can provide it to you. So in terms of any tangible evidence we're going to get out of what this has accomplished for Saskatchewan, I don't think we're going to see that immediately, but we'll see if the province can really expand those export markets like it says it has been doing over the past decade. So we'll see more what he says today, hopefully.
What's been the discussion about Trump at the legislature this week for people that have not been paying close attention? Because a lot of the stuff's been overshadowed by the national, international news.
Well, it's interesting because the conversation in question period moved to what are you doing symbolically or otherwise not to do business with Donald Trump. And we've had lots of examples. Medical supplies, most of which we get from the U.S. and have no other alternative, is a huge problem for government. But there's a contract with the company that basically does your blood testing in Saskatchewan that was taken over basically by an American company, if I understand correctly. Untendered contract, big contract with Saskatchewan Health. Interestingly, the NDP pointed out that they donate both to the Saskatchewan Party and the U.S. Republican Party, of which Donald Trump is a member. And the questions raised in the legislature were all about that. But I think the purpose of the questions were really to raise and connect what I think Mira Conway called the Magna adjacent or Magna element of the Sask Party caucus backbench. She might be overstating this, but it ties into what I think I previously said of why it's really difficult for Scott Moe and this government to take much credit for anything. Because they have sentiments or because they've demonstrated sentiments favoring some things that MAGA and U.S. President Donald Trump was at least doing previously. It's the same problem that Pierre Poilievre is having on the election campaign. He can't escape it when the tariff agenda of Donald Trump is so toxic and so difficult. The stench just sticks to everything right now. And to a certain extent, even though it provided a service for Scott Moe maybe to get a little bit more insight into what may likely happen with the tariffs, and the Sask Party has played that up, saying, you guys in the NDP, you're panicked, you were running around like Chicken Little, et cetera, while we were calm and we kind of had a better idea. Well, great, except now we're still stuck with a mess, even though maybe that mess isn't the worst possible scenario of 10 to 25% tariffs, but it's still an economic mess created by the big orange monster in the White House. And anything close to that, or even close to something like that, is I think the Sask Party and Scott Moe have purported to be, is problematic for them now. And the NDP sense that and are doing everything in their power to illustrate the connections, some of which are there, some of which probably aren't. But anyway, they are smart enough politically to know it's problematic for Scott Moe and the Saskatchewan Party.
Jeremy, something that crosses over to the federal election campaign is this issue of childcare and $10 a day. And again, this came up this week, and it's been something that's been talked about as potentially being something that bleeds over into the federal election campaign.
Yeah, so Saskatchewan and Alberta are the only two provinces right now that don't have a childcare deal with the federal government. And so this has been a big issue for childcare operators in the province, for families who are relying on this $10 a day childcare. The NDP has been bringing this up in the legislature as well. You had Joan Pratcher with the NDP questioning Minister Everett Hindley. What's the real reason why Saskatchewan has not signed this deal? She's suggesting the minister's been giving a lot of different answers on this, and she says the NDP's been receiving hundreds of calls and emails about it. So people are concerned. So we had Education Minister Everett Hindley. He's been responding to this. He says we have this existing arrangement with Ottawa ends on March 31st, 2026. So he's saying there's still a lot of time to get a deal done here. And he says we want to get the best deal for Saskatchewan childcare operators. There's a lot of concerns right now with the pay that's coming in, whether that's enough to support these operators who are running these homes. Hindley also wants to look at extending the age for government support. So right now, I think once you hit age 6, you don't get that support. And so he's trying to see if Saskatchewan kids can get that support at age 6, have that government funding for childcare. So he says Saskatchewan's ready to negotiate when Ottawa is back after this election.
Murray, what do you make of the timing? We only have a minute left here.
It's in terms of childcare, it's just a red hot mess simply because it's a big program in need of administration. And as we well know, governments don't always administrate terribly well. The childcare advocates, the people running child care outlets will tell you it's a great program conceptually. It's helping them, but they're saying they're not getting the money. And I think that's where Minister Hindley has some legitimate argument. The agreement doesn't end until March 2026. So there is a whole year to fix this. I think the reluctance on the part of this government is also political because this is not on Pierre Poilievre's agenda in terms of childcare. The more they can make this program look like one that isn't working properly, maybe it's a little bit of a political advantage, but there is also the legitimate problem, and childcare advocates suggest that they're just not getting enough money in the time they need it. There's also a huge issue of nonprofit childcare versus profit childcare, which the Sask party has been accused of supporting less than the nonprofit childcare, and I think that that's another issue in play here. Right now, I guess we'll sort of see how it works out. But the funny thing about this one, it's another political problem because people feel very strongly about it. And the government has had a lot of significant blowback for not proceeding with this deal and getting a solid deal in place before the fear of another government coming in and changing it all.
Thanks, Murray. Thanks,
You're very
Jeremy.
welcome.
Thank you.
Murray Mandryk writes a political column in the Regina Leader-Post. Jeremy Symes covers the legislature for the Canadian Press.